Hello friends, my name is Colin Green.
And I'm Andy Green, and we want to welcome you to Landing Learning with World History.
Today we're going to be talking about how a single man and 508 soldiers took over the entire Aztec Empire.
Mr. Green, how did they manage to do that? The Aztecs were at least 80,000 miles at their peak.
Oh, me from the past. I was so stupid. All it took was a little bit of trickery to do it. But before that, let's talk about where it all began.
In 1485 in Medellin, near Merida, Extremadura, Castile, which is around 200 miles from present Madrid.
Cortés was born into a relatively poor family. But according to Cortés' secretary, they had little wealth, but much honor.
Francisco Lopez de Gomara explained how at age 14 the young Hernán was sent to study at Salamanca in west central Spain because he was very intelligent and clever in everything he did.
Gomara went on to explain him as ruthless, naughty, and mischievous. While studying in Salamanca, he found much interest in Columbus's stories of exploration to the New World, which eventually led him to be a part of the American exploration himself.
Originally, he set out for the east coast port of Valencia with the idea of serving in the Italian wars, but instead he wandered around for a year.
The first time he came to the New World was around 1504, when he sailed for the island of Hispaniola, which is now Santo Domingo. There in Hispaniola, he became a farmer and a town council member for about the first 6 years or so he established his position.
Sadly, he contracted syphilis and as a result missed the expeditions of Diego Nicuesa and Alonso de Ojeda, which sailed for the South American mainland in 1509. By 1511, he had recovered and he sailed with Diego Velázquez to conquer Cuba. There, Cortés received a house in capital Santiago and a group of Indian slaves, which at the time was a high reward.
Whilst there, he was twice elected the governor of Santiago, as he was seen as the man who, in all he did, in his preference, bearing conversation, manner of eating, and dressing, gave him the signs of a great lord. This is foreshadowing to the Aztec Empire.
When Cortés sailed for the coast of Yucatan on February 18, 1519, he had 11 ships, around 600 soldiers, and about 100 sailors, and most importantly, 16 horses.
In March 1519, he landed in Tabasco, where he stayed for a little to gain intelligence from local Indians. He won them over and received presents from them, including 20 women, one of whom, Marina, became his mistress, interpreter, and bore him his first son.
On the mainland, Cortés did what no other expedition leader had done. He exercised and disciplined his army, but the ultimate expression of his determination to deal with disaffection occurred when he sank his ships. By that single action, he committed himself and his entire force to survival by conquest.
Cortés then set out for the Mexican interior, relying sometimes on force, sometimes on enmity towards the local Indian people, but always careful to keep conflict with them at a strict minimum.
The key to Cortés' subsequent conquest lay in the political crisis within the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs were bitterly resented by many of the subject people who had to pay tribute to them. The ability of Cortés' leader is nowhere more apparent than in his quick grasp of the situation, a grasp that was ultimately to give him more than 200,000 Indian allies.
The nation of Tlaxcala was in war with Monumenta II, the ruler of Aztec Empire. They resisted Cortés at first, but became his most faithful ally, rejecting all of Monumenta's threats to keep him away from Tenochtitlan or Mexico, the capital.
Cortés entered the city on November 8th, 1519 with his small Spanish force and only 1,000 soldiers. Montezuma received him with great honor. Cortés soon decided to seize Montezuma to hold the country through its monarch and achieve not only its political conquest, but its religion conversion.
It's time for the open letter. This letter was a part of one of the 5 letters Cortés wrote to the King of Spain.
In order, most point, sire, to convey your majesty a just conception of the great extent of this noble city of Tenochtitlan, and of many rare and wonderful objects it contains, of the government and dominions of Moctezuma, the sovereign, of the religious rites and the customs that prevail, and the order that exists in this, as well as other cities pertaining to his realm. It required the labor of many accomplished writers and much time for the completion of the task.
Throughout this letter, we can see how highly Cortés speaks of the Aztec Empire and their accomplishments. This could lead us to believe why Cortés wanted to reign over the Aztecs so badly. He wanted what they had, and the easiest way for him to do that was to just conquer them, and that's just what he did.
Alright, moving on, one of the main reasons Cortés was able to conquer them is because of the tomfoolery he pulled off on the city of Tenochtitlan. He had made them believe he was a returning god who the Aztecs were strongly devoted to, which is quite understandable from someone coming from Europe at the time who looked completely different than what anyone around them looked like.
Because of this, he was able to infiltrate the Aztecs and ultimately conquer them on August 13th, 1521. The victory marked the fall of the Aztec Empire. Cortés had become an absolute ruler over huge territory extending from the Caribbean Sea to the Pacific Ocean.
In 1524, his restless urge to explore and conquer took him south to the jungles of Honduras. The 2 years he spent there damaged his health. His property was seized by the officials he had left in charge.
Cortés's fifth letter to the Spanish king attempts to justify his reckless behavior and concludes with a bitter attack on various powerful rivals and enemies who have obscured the eyes of your majesty. But it was his misfortune that he was not dealing with simply with the king of Spain, who was an emperor who ruled most of Europe for a time, had little time for any distant colonies.
In 1528, Cortés sailed for Spain to plead his cause in person with the king. He brought with him a great wealth of treasure and a magnificent entourage. He was received by Charles at his court at Toledo and created Marqués del Val. He also remarried in a ducal family. He returned to New Spain in 1530 to find the country in a state of anarchy and so many accusations made against him, even that he had murdered his first wife, Catalina, who had died that year. After reasserting his position and reestablishing some sort of order, he retired to his estates at Cuernavaca.
Finally, a viceroy was appointed, after which in 1540 Cortés returned to Spain. By then, he had become thoroughly disillusioned. His life was miserable by litigation, and all the rest is anticlimax. As he said, I am poor and in debt again and again. I have begged your majesty. And in the end, he was permitted to return to Mexico, but he died before that, even before he reached Sevilla.
And that's about it. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next one.